Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar to discuss the power of improving the employee experience. A very important and popular topic. I understand we have over 600 people registered to view this this webinar. Of course, if you aren't able to join live, we will be sending you the recording afterwards. So worry not, it will be in your inbox this week if you aren't able to join us live and you have registered. So why are we doing this webinar this morning? I think I don't need to tell anyone on the call, the industry is racked with recruitment and retention challenges. It's been a challenge for a long time. I can see Jaime nodding his head. It's been an issue, a very big issue for us for a long time, which is ongoing for multiple reasons. We have a staggering 87% turnover rate on average, and 68% of employees are thinking about leaving their jobs. These are huge, huge numbers. Again, this cost will be different for everyone on the call, but the cost can be up to £22,000 to replace a lost employee. So I guess enough good reasons to be thinking about this topic. And focusing on it for 2023. So I have two guests with me this morning. So Stuart Green is one of our directors at Mapal, and Jaime, I will let introduce himself. Jaime is the founder of our product Engagement by Mapal, which I should add is timed perfectly with this webinar here, is timed perfectly with the launch of that product to our customers in the UK. So we communicated to our existing customers last week, and the response has been overwhelming. So I think that's a great sign, Jaime, right? That it's going to go well here. So Jaime, if you wouldn't mind kicking off, just giving us a bit of an introduction, then I'll pass back to Stuart to introduce himself, and then we'll jump into questions from there.
Well, Ellie, thank you so much for letting me be here. And I'm so excited to be part of Mapal, to the Mapal group. Actually, we joined it 8 months ago. So yeah, I'm the founder of Mapal, also with my partner. He's not able to be here today, Bernardo. So we started this company like 8 years ago. What we decided is just to improve engagement in the hospitality industry. So I'm so excited to talk about this today.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good to have you here. Stuart, do you want to just do a brief introduction, then we'll jump into questions?
Hi, yeah, good morning, Ellie. Thanks for having me. I'm the Inside Sales Director for Mapal Group, which essentially means I look after the team of prospectors in our regions across the world. So very much on the front line of what we're trying to do to attract potential new customers into our business and to explain how we develop tools and what we can do for our industry.
Perfect, Stuart. And the numbers that I talked about at the beginning there, are these numbers something that when you're talking to customers generally, do they support the numbers that I just mentioned before, or was that news to you?
I think, this is very well understood by the industry. That you look at the industry news and you see what's going on out there, and I think numbers are going to be different for each business, but yeah. I think that they're very much in the ballpark, and the point being is that they're ridiculously high, right? That's the issue that everybody's facing, whether you bang on those numbers in your own experience or just in and around that ballpark. It's still a big issue for us, right?
Absolutely. And excuse my muting and not muting. I have a terrible cough, which is still there. So I'm trying not to spread it across the webinar. Agreed, Stuart. And Jaime, I'm really fascinated to hear from you. And I guess most of our audience will be as well. You're the founder of Engagement. So I guess there's no one better to talk us through this topic and really understand how we can help customers do better and improve their current systems. Can you tell us a little bit about why you founded, good job, now Engagement by Mapal, and just tell us how it all started and what drove you to do that?
Absolutely. This all started like 8 years ago. Actually, it was in a restaurant. I had a great experience with as a customer with a waitress, and I decided to go to talk to the manager just to let him know that she's doing a great job. And actually, I said, like, hey, that she's doing a really good job. Actually, that was the first name of our company, Good Job. So, after that, the manager replied to me like, hey, I know that she's doing great. And he asked me to leave a review in Google Business. So at that very moment, I realized that there was no place, to leave a direct recognition to that employee. Actually, nowadays, you can easily find complaint sheets, but there's no place, to say thank you to an employee. So at that very moment, my partner and I, we realized that if we review in that Google business, that will not help that employee, to raise their motivation and to feel important and to feel that they're doing a really good job. So we did some research and we found that hospitality staff are really looking for recognition to have a great employee experience. This is a word that you will listen today from my side, employee experience. This is a really important part of the engagement project. So we finally decided to launch Good Job, what we call today Mapal Engagement. And it started as the first online platform to lead feedback and direct recognitions to that frontline staff. Almost 1 year before we develop all the features that we're going to talk in a minute, to help, raise that engagement. For instance, peer-to-peer recognition, a whole suite of internal communication solutions, and of course, agile feedback platform that's very important nowadays. But those days, we are missing one important feature that employee demands, that are training, learning, to improve their learning skills. But nowadays, to being part of Mapal group and being part of all the Mapal hospitality solutions that we have in the market. So finally, we are able, to give all the employees what they are really demand, to improve their engagement or motivation. So, yep, I'm pretty excited to be part of this project.
And it goes both ways, because I think, again, Stu and I were discussing this last week around why we think that there was such a huge response to the launch of this in the UK last week. And I think a lot of our customers use tools like this already. Surprisingly, many of them use things like WhatsApp for communication, which I think everyone probably does in some format for work, but from a large team perspective, a bunch of challenges that come around that. And even if they have more, as platforms built specifically for this, they have multiple logins and we have challenges around that. So again, Stu and I were discussing this, and feel free to add, Stuart, and anything that you've heard from the team and from our customers as to the main reasons why having everything in one place is a major benefit of the companies working together.
Well, it's exactly that, as you say, Ellie. I mean, our core business, as you know, in the UK for a long time has been learning with the Flow product. And we hear a lot when we're launching multiple products and we've got various different solutions, to combine the power of those products. And so to have engagement embedded in with the Flow application. So it's, it's within the same app within Mapal One. You've got reporting in one place with Mapal OS. I mean, that's a major bugbear for people. To try and bring all of this into that centralized location is really exciting for us, and I think for our clients and customers as well.
Absolutely, 100%. And Jaime, back to you. What do you think employees are looking for as the most important things to create a great employee experience? What would you say the top 3 things are that are important for employees?
Well, that's a really good question. Now in the industry, we are facing great challenges. The first one is the lack of motivation. It is really hard to communicate with the frontline staff. The low productivity that we have in many restaurants and hotels, the lack of engagement, and it's pretty hard to attract talent and even more difficult to retain that talent nowadays. So actually, there's some McKinsey research that it was launched 8 months ago, where they shows what employee really demands. And they are demanding, listen, the first thing is to feel valued by the managers. We are human beings, and we need to feel that we are part of the company. The second thing is to be recognized for their jobs, their work. The third one is development opportunities, career plans. They need to understand that if they stay in the company, they have opportunities, to raise in the company and to become a better employee and a better professional. The fourth one is good colleagues. We are in an industry where people are really young. So they need to have a really good experience, and their peers are pretty important to have that employee experience. Okay, so you have to build a team. And last but not least is the sense of belonging. But the main problem nowadays is that employers still thinking that the main issue or the best way to retain that talent is to raise their salaries, and they're not. As I said before, that 5 reasons is what they are demanding the employees nowadays.
So interesting, and also I may be a little bit controversial currently with the current cost of living crisis in the UK. I think there would be an element of pay that would be almost a separate issue to the overall employee experience, which is more of a general piece, right? Everything you've just mentioned there, I couldn't agree with it more. And I guess, again, if I think back, I love the fact that you took that time 8 years ago to have that conversation with a manager to talk about the waitress. It's how I started my career in hospitality, was waitressing, and I loved it. And I took a lot of it gave me a lot of passion and excitement to get that feedback, but it was very, very rare, right? And very, very rare that even the manager would take that time to give you that feedback. So I think it's really important, but also the peer-to-peer recognition piece, I think that's really valuable. And again, if I even just think about our own team here, how much they value that interaction with a colleague and somebody recognizing them publicly and how much that means to them. Stuart, any comments from you on those topics?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I do an awful lot of study in this area because it's critical to the development of our own teams in our business, but also as to trying to understand what's going on out there and how we can be successful in these areas. I watched a piece on social a few weeks ago, and it was a company desperately trying to understand this retention issue and what they can do. And the gentleman who answered him was essentially saying, look, we're in a different zone now. Back in my parents' day, people might have had a job that lasted them a lifetime, and they worked there because of necessity of trying to afford to live, and then perhaps my generation, I mean, I know I'm old, but, we work towards having a more fruitful life, more money and better life experience. Whereas employees nowadays are really looking towards what Jamie's talking about, which is that entire belonging and wanting to be part of something and have that recognition and feeling part of the mission. How can I make an impact, and all those sorts of things that people are talking about now. And I just think that changes the dynamic of what we're trying to do as employees to retain staff. And I couldn't agree more with that piece about employees leaving because of a bad manager. It's not necessarily the position or the job that they dislike. It's the way they're treated whilst doing it that resonates with them. And, I think that's something we can all look inwardly to try and improve.
It's a great point. And also, I would imagine, and Jaime, I'd love to hear your views on how the reporting dashboards are used for the engagement tools by head office teams or managers, because previously the way that you would see that, Stuart, right, is if you can see the figures dropping in a site, but it's almost too late at that point. Whereas I guess, with good engagement, so, systems and processes in place, and I'll come to some suggestions you have shortly, Jaime, but if you've got visibility on that, it can be good triggers on whether that performance of that manager is good. Is he good at that people engagement piece, or is that something that needs to be further supported? How are those stats used? Because I couldn't agree with Stuart more on the manager being such a key individual to the employee experience. How do the reporting tools support that, Jaime? And is that something that are well used and then built into KPIs, or how do you find that works for managers at the moment and operating teams?
Well, actually, it's all about data nowadays. So without data, it's not possible to move forward in terms of motivation and in terms of productivity and all the KPIs that we're going to talk in a minute. But the first thing that you need to run an employee engagement project is to have a clear corporate value. I would call it like the instructions book. The second part of that project that you need is to run an internal diagnosis. Through that diagnosis, more data that you need, it's like a blood analysis, like your first blood analysis to understand how is your employee experience nowadays. So, for instance, in Mapal engagement, what we do nowadays is we ask about 24 variables that are pretty important to have the data to understand how they feel about those 24 variables. Okay. The third thing that you need is to run several activations. Employees need, after you have that information in that diagnosis, they need to feel that you already listen and you're going to act, you're going to move, you're going to do some things. Okay, you're going to start with different activations that we hope improve that employee experience. The fourth thing that you have to do is an engagement program. Okay, the rules of the game: career plans, rewards, emotional salaries, and other activations that that has to be pretty clear for the staff from the beginning. And with all that and all the technology, you will gather a lot of information in the dashboard. That dashboard, it has to be pretty clear for the manager, to gather and jump into that information and to understand, for instance, who is the best employee saved by the customer, which venues provides the best service, who are the best colleagues, excels in their soft skills, I don't know, like who meet their performance objectives, which employees are more engaged in terms of communications, because you will have a lot of data. You can see a lot of different pieces of content, and you will have pretty much like in social networks, you will have that information, who pressed the like button, who comment, who showed that video or whatever. So with all that information, it's going to be easier for you to answer those big questions that you need to understand in terms of people and culture, how you can improve your company.
Great. And you've answered, sorry, Stu, did you have a comment there?
Well, I was just going to say, and I guess having that information at your fingertips and almost in a live scenario, like in real time, is well, it's certainly important in our team, because you can spot something there and then that you can either intervene or complement or however it needs dealing with. But it's having it there and now, isn't it? Rather than once a week, once a month, however you might look at it, right?
It's ongoing data. It's real-time data, as you said before. Yep, and that's beautiful, because when you have the data, it's pretty easier to you, to know what you have to do in your next step.
Well, you're making informed decisions, aren't you? Rather than guesswork, and very, very live information as well, not month old or week old, based on pulling reports from various different things. And so you've mentioned a few of them already, Jaime. So what, if there was any advice, that there'll be a lot of operators listening today or watching the recording back, and for those people who are running sites day to day, what would be the best examples that you've seen where you've implemented engagement by Mapal, or seen them using something else that's working really well for them? What are the best tips you could give them to enhance their overall customer experience?
Well, I would say that every engagement project needs 4 pillars. This is pretty much like the legs of a table. If you miss one of those, everything on top of it will fall off. Okay, so there are 4 main pillars. I would say that it's pretty important to have success. So the first thing is recognition. It's the base of the project, because we are human beings and we are eager to have that recognition, not just from our customers, but also from our colleagues. In Mapal engagement, what we decided years ago to develop, it's to develop that peer-to-peer recognition. Nowadays, you are able to send recognitions among peers based on corporate values. So this way, you are enhancing those behaviors in terms of culture, and you detect hidden talent, and that's really good. So I would say that this is the first step that you have to do. The first tip I would say to the audience, okay? But also, it's pretty important to let the customers give that recognitions to that employees, to that frontline staff. Okay, so and the beautiful thing here, this is pretty unique in the market, in our technology, is that we let those employees to be the owner of those recognitions when they leave their company. Therefore, they will make an extra effort, to offer a great experience to the customers while they are working at your business, because they will own those recognitions as part of their resume in the future. So this is a win-win situation. That's the first step that I would Can
I ask a question on that? What would you do if you don't have clearly defined values in a company? So for the maybe smaller operators today who they probably know what they are, but they aren't clearly defined somewhere, what would be your recommendation there?
That's a really good question. So, culture, it's always there. So you just have to find it. You just have to understand, because if you are the owner of a restaurant or two, you are the culture of that restaurant. So the first thing that you have to do is to understand and to put in pen and paper, you know, to put it down and write it down. What are your main corporate values? Because you already have it, but you just have to understand, and you have to be clear with your company, with your staff, with your colleagues, that there are behaviors that they are attached to those corporate values that you will applaud, you know, in the future. So culture is it's the main part, you know, and that's why recognition, it would help not just to find hidden talent in the company, but also to motivate and to let them understand what is which is the corporate value in that company. Okay, so that in terms of recognition. The second tip that I will recommend, Ellie, it's internal communication, of course, ongoing internal communication, but in both directions. Usually we used to let the administrator, you know, the manager, the CEO, just to a monologue, just to talk in one way. So we have to let them speak, you know, because they are pretty important in the company. So we are talking about not just chats, groups. We're talking about corporate social networks, group channels, segmented surveys, suggestion box. You know, finally, you know, with all the data, you will understand who are those that participate the most, what content has more engagement, and other important data that will boost your internal communication. So, you know, in this case, internal communication, it's pretty important nowadays to have people engage and motivate.
And there were two more. You said four pillars.
Yeah, the third one, it's agile and ongoing feedback. Pretty important. You know, you need to gather information. You have to gather information to understand who are doing great at performance, but in an ongoing basis. This is not. This is next step from performance appraisal that we used to do annually. So, you know, people are demanding, please tell me if I'm doing good. Audit my protocols. Please give me information about if I'm raising or developing my soft skills, or for instance, leadership skills. Whatever you wanna measure, ongoing feedback. It's pretty important. That's the third leg of the table. And the fourth one, it's what we are doing nowadays, the flow. It's training. As I said before, employees demand development opportunities and career plans. So ongoing training is the key to run that career plans and help them improve. So, you know, the thing here, it's in that table, if you miss one of that legs or one of those pillars, the project, it's likely to fail. So those four main pillars are pretty important nowadays.
It's fascinating, actually. We're working with a couple of customers on a return on investment project where we're going to be analyzing the data once they've launched the new career mapping functionality in the Flow platform. So it'd be interesting to link that with the engagement data as well, and fascinating to see, once you've mapped that out clearly, how does that impact staff retention and overall employee experience? Because again, as you say, everything backs that up, but it'd be great to be able to show that to customers. One we can take back to product. If this is live, I think technically it means it goes straight on the roadmap, right? One more question for you, Jaime. When it comes to recognition, of course, very important to recognize people, even just by saying well done or thank you very much, thank you, right? Even just a small word like that's important. But do you think it's important to have additional financial recognition and rewards, or who needs to be the recognizer? I'd be interested to know what that means and how your best customers do recognition really well.
Well, nowadays we have, I would say, two kind of rewards or recognitions. The first one is, of course, a salary or improve their salary, a bonus, or any other payment, extra payment that you can give for the employees. But, you know, after six years working in engagement programs, we realize that the emotional salary, it's even more important. When we are talking about emotional salary, we're talking about, I don't know, just letting know all the company that you are the employee of the month, say by the customer or internally by your peers, or you are the ambassador or one of the corporate values, or even you can win, I don't know, one of these bracelets that I have right here. It's pretty easy, you know, to give that bracelet to those ambassadors or those that doing a good job, or maybe they did, I don't know, like 3 or 4 trainings that you send through Flow. So, you know, that kind of emotional salary, it's pretty important. It's even more important that the payment salary that you can, or the payment reward that you can give for the employees.
Nice. I actually don't think I've heard that language used before, the emotional salary, and I like it. And I think, again, every book that I read or every article or podcast I listen to on this topic, or just general about managing people or how to keep people excited, I totally agree. I think the baseline has got to be there from a salary perspective, and there's got to be a minimum standard that's met, but that's almost kind of expected by people. But then the big stuff is, yeah, the kind of how are they supported by their manager, encouraged, recognized, and all of those things. So believe it or not, we only have a couple of minutes left, and it always goes so quickly. Stuart, jumping back to you, what are the most important things, or kind of the best examples of employee experience initiatives that you've seen, either as a manager, director, leader yourself, or by other customers that you've worked with? And kind of final comments for the webinar and for our customers today.
Well, I think I mean, I like the language Jamie used about the emotional salary, as it were, because I think we'd all agree that, you know, there's still lots of very passionate people in our industry, and you know, employers are simply pushed to be better. Right? We see that with, you know, with the flow and engagement products, where people don't come to us just for a compliance tool anymore, and they're pushing us to create tools that help engage staff and encourage communication and sharing of knowledge. And it is that whole reward recognition piece that's important to the quality of the life of the employee. And certainly we try to engage with that in our own business. You know, we have our values and we promote them into our teams. And I genuinely think it's that sort of transparency, that sharing of knowledge piece, the real conversations that we have with people to understand what makes them tick and how we can break through into that part. You know, going back 20, 30 years, I had a sales manager once say to me, if you've got a you know, a striker in your football team with a broken leg, don't ask him to score goals till you fix the leg. Yeah, and I know these are very simple, you know, well-beaten concepts, but, you know, genuinely look after the people and have them, you know, part of the mission and understanding how important the role that they play is. And that's all through the recognition piece that we're discussing today. You know, if you have an employee in that mindset, do they do better work? I mean, the answer is yes, right?
Absolutely. I've got a bunch of questions in here, and one of them is for you, Jaime. Would it be possible to share the McKinsey survey you spoke about? I'm wondering if that's something you'd be able to add into a link to that into the chat here for everyone joining. That would be super useful. Thanks for that question, Trevor. Thanks to everyone else. I'm just looking through the questions as we speak now. The first pillar you suggested, very important, and peer-to-peer recognition, excellent idea. Agreed. Okay, I'm just listening to see if there's any more questions here. Maybe for you, Jaime, what would be your final comments? We've got 1 minute left, so there's a bunch of comments here, but I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to read them all. I don't think there's any other questions in there, more comments, which is really, really helpful. Thanks, everyone. Jaime, final comments from you. Anything you'd like to say or get across to the team before we finish up?
Well, I would say that in terms of engagement, at the end of the day, what we are looking is to improve our business results. So when we think about engagement and motivation in staff, think about money, because at the end of the day, this will impact in 3 main KPIs: reduce the voluntary turnover, reduce absenteeism, and raise productivity. You said before, Ellie, it's the cost of replace one member of the team. It costs like 20K pounds.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money at the end of the day. So if you are able, you know, with this motivation and engagement solutions, technologies and programs, all that stuff, you know, if you are able to reduce, I don't know, like 10% of that voluntary turnover, at the end of the day, it's a lot of money in your business.
Yeah.
So because the main asset that we have in our companies nowadays are people, our people, our staff. So anything
we can do to improve that. Absolutely. Well said. And if there's anything again on stats or ROI information you've got on that, I'm sure everybody on the webinar would be interested to hear. So we're out of time, but thank you so much, Stuart and Jaime, for joining us. Really interesting. I hope everyone joining got something from it. If you want more information on Mapal, engagement by Mapal via the Mapal One app, if you already use Flow, again, accessible in the same app with simple reporting as well. If you don't, obviously can be accessed as a standalone application as well. If that's interesting for you and you need something, get in touch with our team. We'll be able to help you and show you around the system a little bit more. Otherwise, please share this on with any other colleagues you think would be interested in the topic. We hope you find it useful, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you kindly.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.